the session. So today's session 5. Last week we had a look at data capture, specifically looking at REDCap, and today we're going to continue with that. We also want to address a little bit some potential confusion in using tools like REDCap and Kobo, specifically in the sense that these are tools, for instance, Kobo and these kinds of tools are usually used to create new data, so to collect data, but we're not using it in that sense. And I think it's really important that people understand in this setting that we're not using these tools, we're not using REDCap to create new data, but we're using REDCap to structure existing data. Because the whole point is not collecting new data. There is so much data out there. The point of this training and what we're setting up is to ensure that we can get more out of the data that's already out there, and that we can link it better to other existing data, and that we can analyze it better, and also, very importantly, that it can be used for outreach and advocacy. And yeah, so I will start today with a presentation to explain a little bit that whole cycle of the data and what we're doing exactly. And then we're going to have some more presentations on data capture and REDCap. But before any of that, I'm going to give Liam the floor so that he can discuss the assignments of this week.
You can hear me now? Yeah, I think so. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, so everybody, you might be thinking, where are the grades? They will come after the session. I'm not completely done with all the grading. However, I have looked through all of your work. I'm very happy to see that almost all of you have been able to work in REDCap, or otherwise at least have been able to identify the field types for all your entities. It looks really good. I'm really happy that you, even with this difficult assignment where there was some confusion about it, you were able to get to work and really improve your models. So keep that up. I will provide all of you with feedback on each assignment. And I think that's all for now. Good work. And my apologies if the document I provided gave some confusion, because I did mention words like collect. We're of course not collecting new data, as Joëlle said. We already have our data, and we model that. So thank you all. Please continue the good work, and the grades will come soon.
Thanks, Liam. So then I'll have a very short presentation on the information strategy and how it links to the data lifecycle. And then we'll have a few presentations on REDCap and data capture. So I just showed this one. So yeah, the reason I'm presenting this is just to give a little bit more insights into what we're doing, and maybe because it's been quite fragmented in this is what we're doing today, this is what we're doing next week. I just wanted to show a bit of an overview of the whole cycle and how the different aspects relate to each other, and yeah, how the data is supposed to travel, let's say, to kind of with the ultimate goal of helping vulnerable communities, and also very importantly giving more agency to these communities, and also that they can control their narrative. So in short, this figure is supposed to show how the life cycle of the data. So in every group, whether it's the We Hobbit groups or the Vodan ANC groups, we start with data that is collected in the field, that is already collected. We're not collecting new data. This data is there. So for instance, patient data from ANC is there. It's collected every day already in the hospitals, in the clinics. It exists. Similarly, the humanitarian data also already exists. The organizations that are in the different teams are already collecting data in the work that they do. So especially humanitarian organizations that work on the ground in refugee camps, etc., they're collecting data every day. The data is there. The data on instances of sexual violence, it exists from these humanitarian organizations and also probably from, I'm assuming, medical clinics and hospitals. So this data is brought from the field. We have this data, and then the question is, what do we do with this data? So the first step here is we bring it to our partners and to our teams. So the ANC teams per country and the WeHubit teams per theme, per topic, this is where the data is brought to. The whole point of the first sessions, and I think I know it was a lot of information, so some of the information may not have gotten through as well because it was a lot. But the first sessions were meant to be really thinking, what is this data that we have, and what do we want to do with it? What more can we get out of this data if we structure it better? And that's where all the different steps of the, making a common data model come in and making a template on REDCap. So we have this data, we bring it to the teams, and there it's decided how this data is handled. So how is it structured, etc. This is decided within the teams, and the structuring of this data obviously reflects what the objective is with this data and what you know that you can gain from this data. Then once that is sorted, once that is decided and the work there has been done, so this is also in the phase that we're at, is figuring out what happens at this stage, then the data is ready and can be analyzed. So we can have better analytics on the data instances. This is within the teams, but can also happen across teams. But I think for the purpose of the exercises in the beginning, it's really happening within the teams. And this data can also be published in situation reports so that there's better archiving, in essence, of the incidences that are happening, because most teams are focused on some kind of incidents. In the ANC teams, obviously, you have medical incidences. In the other teams, you have incidences related to human trafficking, to refugees' protection needs, to sexual violence. So this can be collected in the situation reports to get overviews of what is happening, and it can also be analyzed. This data that is now structured and that can much more easily be analyzed and also linked to other data can then be used for research and publication. So this is where the data that was in the field that was not really available to anyone else can properly become available to the wider public, and knowledge is created from this data so that it can also be used in other cases. For instance, we often work with expert reports where we're writing on asylum cases, and we always rely on existing research, on articles that have been published and that explain or show what the situation was like in, for instance, in Eritrea or with human trafficking. But this is where all of the knowledge that comes from the data is, and that can be used later for different cases, and can also be used for advocacy and protection needs. Because once this data is published and is available to the wider public, it can much more easily be used to get some kind of policy change, or generally just more attention on what the situation is. And this is also, and this final step links to, the response. What can we do with it? And I think recently there was an exploration of how to use post-traumatic growth with that, which I think Pete will be able to talk much better about than I can. But essentially, it's allowing treatment and also the people to who this information belongs to, in essence, to have a better narrative of the story. So if we look at it more detailed, this is kind of the same, but with a little bit more explanation. So the first part of the data instance that's collected in the field and that is recorded, that's recorded by organization in the field. So this can be humanitarian organizations, but if I go here, it can also be health facilities and ANC patient records. This data is then able to be visited through data visiting with interoperability, of course, with always strict access control for privacy and security. And it can be published, for instance, in situation reports, which EPA publishes. Once this information can be visited and there is more interoperability, we can have better analytics upon the data. And this is also where access control mechanisms come in play. And this can be done with a dashboard and also allows for triangulation, because then you have different kinds of data and you can see how they support each other and how well they create a better picture, basically, of what's happening. And this can happen through in Vodan, and it's like across the different groups, so across the WeHabit teams and the Vodan teams, and also across the Vodan and WeHabit teams. So because ANC data can also be very relevant, for instance, with sexual violence data. So there's also linkages between those teams. It's not that they're isolated, in the humanitarian and the medical. So then the analytics can also be reported through triangulations based on findability and access control. So this is, I mean, you can always triangulate at a larger level, right? So you can triangulate with similar data, then you can triangulate with data from other teams, and you can triangulate with information that is available online in other research, for instance, etc. And this is also where you can publish the data, as I mentioned. And then from there, we get to external outreach and triangulation, so advocacy, but also creating new networks, reaching out to other people that are working on similar things, because now you're able to really show what you're doing and thereby create collaborations with others. And as I mentioned, yeah, you have strategies for collaboration on data autonomy of sensitive data, and that links to treatment and also peace building. This is the same slide, but showing that it can also be done for clinics. It's not just for humanitarian situations. And I think I'm going to leave it here for now. There are more slides which are basically the same, but more written out. So you'll be able to read them later if you want to go over it again. But just for now, and because of time, I'm going to leave it here.